And God said, Behold, I have given you every herb-bearing seed. To you it shall be for food. Genesis 1:29. Man did eat angels' food. He sent them meat to the full. Psalm 78:25. Everyday Manna with Lisa.
Hi everybody, and welcome to Everyday Manna. Today we are going to make one of my favorite Chinese dishes, and that is Mongolian beef. It is absolutely scrumptious. To go alongside that, we are going to do a sauteed zucchini and onion dish and the sweet sugar glazed carrots to go along with it. So let's get started. Now, the first thing you need to do is get your sauce for the Mongolian beef cooking, because it's got to reduce. Couldn't be easier though. In a small saucepan, we're gonna add 1 cup of soy sauce. Now remember, this is gonna reduce. And we're going to add 1 cup or so of water. And we're going to add 1 cup of dark brown sugar, lightly packed. Now, this particular recipe, you really need that dark brown sugar, because this is the sweet glaze that surrounds the crispy beef that we're gonna fry in just a minute. And you need the dark brown sugar because it's got a richer, deeper flavor than light brown. If you only have light brown sugar, then you could use it, but you're not gonna get that deep, rich molasses flavor. If you only have light brown and maybe you have some molasses, use the 1 cup of light brown, but add maybe a tablespoon of the molasses flavoring to it. Stir that up and get that going, because we are going to put that over medium-high heat at this moment to bring it to a good simmer, because we're gonna reduce that to a thick glaze. To that, we're gonna add a couple of cloves of garlic that's minced and some ginger, because really one of the main flavor components of this dish, it's a very, very gingery flavor to the sauce. So I've got a piece of ginger that I just took a spoon and got off the outside coating of the ginger, and I'm gonna grate it using my microplane, and I like ginger. So I'm gonna add about, I don't know, 2 or 3 tablespoons of the ginger. The first time I had this dish, I've always loved a Chinese dish called Szechuan beef, or beef a la Szechuan. It's a very, very hot, spicy, crispy fried beef dish from the Szechuan province of China. And that has for years, goodness, probably 30 years, been my favorite Chinese dish. Well, one day I was at a restaurant, and Austin was with me, and Aaron was with me, and Aaron loves sesame chicken. So he had gotten his sesame chicken at this particular place where we were, and Austin didn't really like the heat on the Szechuan, but he likes the beef. So he ordered this dish called Mongolian beef, and he couldn't eat it all. I'd never tasted it, so I said, well, let me try it, and I took 1 bite, and oh, my mouth just, exploded with flavor. It was fabulous. Tender beef fried and coated in this rich, sweet sauce. So it is now my new favorite Chinese dish. And when we go to this particular restaurant, then that's what I order now. I love it. It was delicious. So see, I've got quite a little pile of ginger here, because this particular sauce needs to be, for lack of a better term, very, very gingery. So I've got a good, probably 3 tablespoons. I'm gonna leave that over here in case I decide I want some more of the fresh grated ginger. You cannot substitute dried ginger in this recipe, or really any recipe that calls for fresh ginger. Dried ginger, although it is made from the ginger, and get that juice too. You see all that juice that come out of that ginger? That's flavor. Dried ginger that we use in cookies and baking and things like that has a completely different flavor. This is fresh ginger. It's got little bit of a bite. It's not spicy hot, but it's got a bite to it and just a sweet heat, if you will, and it is delicious. For those of you that don't know, this is called a hand of ginger. And when you're at the store, if it comes in a great big piece, just break off however much that you need. I find if I don't use all of what I buy, I wrap it really good in saran wrap or put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. And it stores, you know, beautifully for about a month or so. And then when I take it out when I need to use it, let it thaw a little bit and it grates and it works fine that way. For me, it always has. So I'll just put that in the freezer. Now, stir up your sauce. Let this come to a simmer. And it needs to reduce by about half because it's gonna come up, it's gonna glaze our beef. Now, let's talk a little bit about the meat that we're gonna use. This is what's called a flank steak. It only comes in this great big piece of beef. As you can see, the grain of the beef runs this way. If you cut it with the grain, you're gonna have a very chewy, inedible piece of beef. But if you cut it across the grain, it's very visible as you can see, the grain runs lengthwise. If you cut it across the grain in short little pieces, you have got the most tender, beefy cut of steak that you will ever put in your mouth. I would honestly rather have this steak grilled or cooked in the Mongolian beef than filet mignon or ribeyes or any of those other steaks. This is my favorite cut of beef. It has great, rich beef flavor. And as you can see, this is a huge steak. So we're gonna cut it down. I am gonna cut it into smaller strips to work with my knife. And then I'm gonna slice it across the grain because I want this to be bite-sized pieces. So cut it into strips and then go across the grain like this. You see the fibers are running this way. We're gonna go across the grain and we're gonna cut it into small little pieces. Let me show you again. If you cut on an angle with your knife, aiming down at like a 45-degree angle against the meat. You don't have to, you can cut it straight down. Then it slices very, very easily. If you've got a sharp knife, it cuts, you know, very easy. It's not difficult at all. You can put it in the freezer for about 30 minutes if you want to before you slice it. And it just tenders or firms up a little bit, makes it even easier to slice. But this is very, very cold, so it's okay. You wanna cut it about, I don't know, 1/4 of an inch thick or thinner. I would not go any thicker than that. And then just set your pieces aside because what we're gonna do with our pieces of flank steak is we're gonna coat it with some cornstarch. Now in the Japanese restaurants, they would use potato starch to coat their beef with, but we do not, I can't find potato starch here. So in the, you know, easy. So I use cornstarch and it really does the same thing. I'm gonna slice up all this, but I wanna show you. Put your beef in a bowl, just any kind of a bowl, and you're gonna need for this big steak about 1/2 cup of cornstarch. And you just wanna take your fingers and you wanna coat all this beef with the cornstarch to where it is totally covered. What that will do is draw out the moisture out of the beef so that when we put it in our skillet over some hot heat, it will crisp up and be crunchy and crispy, and that's what we want. So I'm gonna go to a break. I'm just gonna slice up the rest of this flank steak, coat it with cornstarch because it needs to sit about 10 minutes before we cook it. And when I come back, we will look at our sauce and get started on our zucchini and onion. I'll be back with you in just a minute. Hey, and welcome back. Now we coated our beef with the cornstarch and we need to let that set for just a few minutes. As you can see, it's already started absorbing that cornstarch, which is what you want. So our sauce is boiling away over here. Now be careful with this because it will boil over on your stove and make a mess. Once it comes to a strong simmer, and this is what I call a strong simmer, they'll show you here. Let it go, don't cover it, just let it reduce. That's what you wanna see, is that kind of a simmer, and let that steam escape. What happens is the water and the soy sauce will concentrate with those flavors and become a thick glaze, which is what we want. Now I've got mine set on medium heat to keep it at that kind of a simmer. We're gonna get started on our side dishes because this only takes a few minutes to cook. This is a very quick, easy meal for you. I'm gonna do zucchini and onion, because when I go to a Japanese restaurant, that's one of my favorite things, is the zucchini and onion. So I have here 4 smallish zucchinis. So I'm going to cut them in half and then cut them in planks like this. You could cut them in rounds if you wanted to. Whatever shape you like is fine. These are small, which means they're gonna be good and tender. If you've got a big one, now you don't want the giant ones. You know, zucchini goes from this to this overnight. You don't want the really big ones. Those are great for zucchini bread, but not for this dish. You want the smaller, tender zucchinis. We're gonna cut them up. I'm doing 4. If it's just 2 of you, you might wanna do 2. Or unless you're like me and you really like zucchini and onion, and then do 4, because that's what you're gonna eat. I love this dish. It couldn't be easier. Don't peel your zucchini, just, you know, keep it, wash it. I'm gonna go ahead and preheat my skillet here. I don't have a wok, so I use skillets for everything. And you know, I find it does just as good. If you have a wok, by all means, use your wok. I have one at home, I just don't have one here. But you know what, most of the time, honestly, I reach for a skillet. So we're just cutting these up, and then we've got a couple of onions. I bought sweet onions today because they had them. It's perfectly fine to use those good Vidalia onions or Maui Maui's or whatever you find in your store. I've got our carrots here, and I hear them, so I'm gonna add about, these are just a bag of those baby carrots, about 1 pound. I'm gonna add a little bit of water, not much, about ½ a cup of water, and about 4 tablespoons of sugar. You could substitute the Splenda if you wanted to in this dish. You know, when you go out to eat at a Japanese restaurant, they have those sweet, sweet, sweet carrots. Well, that's kind of what this is gonna be. They're easy. You just need to cook them in sugar water, and really until it reduces down and glazes the carrots. That could not be an easier side dish. Let's finish our zucchini, and then we'll cut up our onions. There we go. Now, let's get our skillet hot, and it's going, and I'm using just some neutral oil, whatever you have on hand. You could use olive oil, canola oil, vegetable oil. This is a quick stir-frying dish, so you can use whatever you want in that. Let that kind of go for a minute. And I'm gonna also add a little bit of butter to that because I like the flavor that it adds. And I notice at the Japanese restaurants, they add butter. That's what they cook in, is oil and butter mix. So I'm gonna let that melt in there, and I'm gonna cut up a couple of onions. If you don't have the sweet onions, you can just use a yellow onion or a white onion or a red onion if you wanted to. Whatever you have on hand is fine. They cut them in those big rounds and then slice them in front of you. I'm not, you know, I'm just gonna do it the easy way, which is cut them in half. Let me move this so you can see. And then just cut them into pieces, just like that. Kind of thick pieces. You don't want them to be too fine. And for me, I'm gonna start the onion first because honestly, I don't like the flavor of raw onion. And I find sometimes if you cook the zucchini with the onion at the same time, the zucchini's done and the onion still is crisp and raw. And for me, I don't like that flavor. I like my onion to be very soft and sweet. So I always start my onion first and then, you know, add the zucchini when the onion is getting very, very soft. Let's go ahead and put this in. We're gonna saute those and then add our delicious zucchini. This is a great recipe to do in the summertime when you've got all that zucchini out of your garden that you need to use up. Find ways to use it up. Zucchini's very good and very good for you. We love it at my home. My mom usually has a garden and we have all kinds of it in the summertime, but you can buy it in the grocery store year-round. This is one of those dishes that you can make year-round. So let's get those going. Now, if you'll notice, I'm not adding any salt to the food today because soy sauces and teriyaki sauces and things like that have a lot of salt in it. So I'm not gonna add any extra salt, but if you want to, you can, and I think I'm out of peppercorns on that one. So you can add a little bit if you want to, but I am gonna add some fresh ground pepper to my zucchini and onion. And for the sauce in this dish, we're gonna use something alongside the soy sauces. You can find what's called teriyaki sauce here. Right beside the soy sauce, you can find the teriyaki marinade and sauce to cook with. It is a little bit sweeter, has a little bit different flavor. It is a soy sauce based product, but it's a little sweeter and it has some other ingredients in it. So I'm using teriyaki with the zucchini today. Carrots are cooking away. Beef is marinating in that, well, it's not really marinating, it's sitting in that cornstarch, and we're gonna get ready to cook that in just a minute. Our onion is softening beautifully. Just take your spatula, break up those pieces. I don't think very many things smell better cooking than onion. Maybe bacon, but onion, to me, cooking just smells so delicious. That looks pretty good. I just kind of want to get that raw edge off and then add the zucchini. So let's add our zucchini in, our little zucchini spears. Our carrots are cooking away. I would serve this meal with some rice, just some steamed rice. I'm not going to show you how to do that on the program today, but you know how to cook rice. And there we go. We're just going to let these things simmer. Sauce is still reducing. Carrots are cooking. We're going to let all that water evaporate off of those carrots. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to get to cooking the main dish, the Mongolian beef, and then coat it with that delicious sauce. We'll be right back with you in just a minute.
There's a place where a total stranger will give their blood to save your life. A place where someone you never knew will save your child from drowning. Where someone will give you food and shelter after a flood. That place is called America, where we look out for each other. When you help the American Red Cross, you help America.
Well, you're wrong.
I'm wrong. You're the one who misrepresented the facts.
Misrepresent the facts? Are you kidding? Your proposal is ridiculous.
You have no right to call
You
anyone
are the
ridiculous.
worst example of
I
politics.
stand for something.
Flip-flop.
I stand for something.
Flip-flopper, flip-flopper.
Your proposal is ludicrous.
My proposal
It's
will go exactly the way I say it
Over
will.
my dead body.
I think somebody needs a timeout.
That's the power of one.
I motion that I be issued the timeout, and
Wow, me too.
yeah, for sure, you should get a timeout.
I apologize.
And I motion that I start showing more respect.
Civility. Pass it on.
everybody, and welcome back. Now, our zucchini and onion has just been sauteing away, and we're going to add some teriyaki sauce. Oh, a couple of teaspoons or so is all you need. Add a little flavor, and some sesame seeds. I just add them right to the skillet, and it kind of toasts them just a little bit. And that's it. And that's all you need to do to cook those wonderful carrots and zucchini. Look at that. Yum, yum, yum. So let's put some of that out on our plate. And that's all you need for that dish. And that is finished. And so very good. So let's set that to the side. Get that off that heat. Our carrots are almost done. The glaze or the water is reducing, and that sugar is coating those carrots. And I'm gonna add the final little pat of butter to that, about a tablespoon, and just let that butter melt over those carrots and kind of glaze them up a little bit. Let's stir those. I'm gonna get our pan hot because we need to get cooking on the beef. The glaze is reduced. Stir those up just a little there. Okay, they're pretty much done. Now, I don't like my carrots, as you would call mushy. I like them to have just a little bit of texture to them. So those are just shy of being mushy. So I like mine to have a little bit of texture to them. So those are done. Let me turn them off and get this pan going on our beef. Now, I'm gonna get that pretty hot because this is something we wanna quickly cook. While that's heating up, I've got some green onions, just some scallions, that I'm gonna cut in 1-inch pieces. And that's really all this dish has in it, is just the green onions. The little bulbous part I'm gonna cut a little finer, and the tops I'm gonna leave alone. I'm gonna cook those briefly in this skillet, and then I'm gonna remove them before I cook the beef. I'm gonna add just a little bit of canola oil to this pan and saute these green onions just very, very quickly. I don't want them to be completely softened, but I do want to take that raw edge off of them. So let's get that going. My pan wasn't quite hot enough. It'll get hot here in just a second. All right, now we sauteed our onions, and I took them out and put them in a bowl. And I'm gonna divide this beef into 2 skillets because you do not want to crowd your pan. Put some vegetable oil or canola oil in about a 1/2-inch depth in your skillet, and add your beef. Don't overcrowd, because if you do, what's gonna happen is it's gonna steam instead of frying, and that is not what you want. You want that crispy golden outside. Because we sliced it so thin, it will cook very, very quickly. This pan has been just, see how it's just getting that golden crust on there? That's what you want. You see that golden? Oh, so good. Delicious beef. Because we sliced it thin, it's gonna cook very, very quickly. Do it in batches, take the time. You'll be sorry if you don't. Because what will happen is it will get steamed instead of fried, and we want it to have that crispy coating on it. So I'm just gonna put that to the side because it's already crisped up. I'm gonna take it out and put it in a separate bowl and finish cooking the rest of it. Flank steak is so good. If you can't find flank steak, and I can't imagine that you wouldn't, but if you can't, you can substitute some sirloin sliced very thin. Really, you could substitute any kind of beef that you like. But I do encourage you to try the flank steak if you can find it. And we're just gonna let this go. Oh, smells so good. Let this saute for just a minute. Let's get that moved around. Turn your pieces over to where they can all get good and crispy. I'm going to add a little bit of this one back to this skillet because that skillet is not quite as hot, I don't think. All right, now let's talk about our sauce. As you can see, it has reduced down by about half. It has gotten thicker and more concentrated in the flavor. Turn it off. Because what we're going to do is after the beef is sauteed, we're going to drain out any excess oil and put the beef back in there and coat it with that sauce to make it rich and deep and delicious and so good. That sauce would be great over chicken. Maybe you don't eat beef. You could eat pork or chicken, either one. A boneless, skinless chicken breast. Cook this the very same way. Coat it in a little cornstarch, and then add in the glaze at the end would be delicious. It wouldn't be Mongolian beef, it'd be Mongolian chicken. You could add that, do that, and add some pineapple chunks to it. Maybe if you don't want to use the green onions, you could add some pineapple chunks to it, would be delicious. If you're going to use a wok, you would want your oil to be at a pretty good depth in the bottom. A wok is shaped, bowl-shaped, and you'd want your oil to be about that deep in the bottom of the wok, and you would have to continually stir-fry it. This is about done. It doesn't take it long to cook. That big flank steak gave us a lot of beef here. Okay, now our beef has all cooked. All I did was remove it from the skillet, drain out the excess oil. Now I'm going to put this wonderful coating over top of it and let it